Imagine the most devastating war in human history drawing to a brutal close.
Now, picture hundreds of enemy combatants, not in a European bunker, but held captive deep within the American heartland. This is Camp Ruston, Louisiana, March 1945, where 247 German women prisoners of war confronted a reality that shattered every wartime indoctrination. These women, former nurses, radio operators, and even captured U-boat crew members, expected hardship, hatred, perhaps even cruelty. Instead, they received 3 nourishing meals a day, authentic coffee, and bread free of sawdust. They witnessed American nurses treating their infected wounds with genuine medicine, and guards sharing cigarettes across the fence. This apparent benevolence was not merely perplexing. It presented a profound psychological paradox, raising questions about the true nature of their enemy and the war itself. Before we delve into Gretta Hoffmann's extraordinary journey within this unexpected reality, and how these women grappled with such a radical shift in perception, please take a moment to hit that like button if you find this historical paradox as intriguing as we do. And tell us in the comments, what do you think was the ultimate goal of such treatment in a time of war? For 32-year-old Gretta Hoffmann, a radio operator tormented by the image of her starving 6-year-old daughter, Anneliese, back in Hamburg, this unanticipated kindness was not a comfort, but a profound internal torment. Every bite felt like a betrayal. Her comrade, Katharina, a former Luftwaffe pilot, dismissed it as a cunning ploy. Yet, Gretta had begun to discern a shared humanity, a genuine camaraderie from their captors that contradicted every narrative she had ever known. March 1945. Camp Ruston, Louisiana. Behind barbed wire, 247 German women prisoners of war confronted a reality that starkly contradicted their preconceived notions of the enemy. While war raged across Europe, these women, comprising nurses, radio operators, and captured U-boat crew members, were situated deep in the American heartland, awaiting the cessation of hostilities. Thousands of miles from their homes, they existed in a liminal space, disconnected from the conflict that had once defined their identities. Gretta Hoffmann pressed her face against the wire, her gaze drawn to American children playing baseball in the distance. At 32, she had left her 6-year-old daughter, Anneliese, behind in Hamburg. 8 months prior, a letter smuggled through Red Cross channels had graphically detailed the pervasive hunger of a relentless, gnawing presence. "Don't torment yourself," Ilse whispered beside her, though her own eyes were brimming with tears. "My Anneliese is 7 now," Gretta murmured. "If she's still ... say it." The guard tower shifted, Sergeant Morrison's gaze once again sweeping over them. His expression held a peculiar American quality Gretta found difficult to interpret. It lacked the expected hatred or indifference, instead conveying something more unsettling than overt cruelty. "Assemble in 5 minutes," another guard shouted, abruptly ending their moment of quiet despair. Following this directive, the female prisoners shuffled towards the mess hall. Gretta's stomach churned, paradoxically. Not from hunger, but from its stark absence. 3 nourishing meals a day, authentic coffee, and bread free of sawdust. Each bite felt like a profound betrayal. "They're fattening us up for some other purpose," Katharina muttered in line. "A former Luftwaffe pilot shot down in North Africa," she added. "This apparent benevolence is merely a ploy." Yet, Gretta had stopped believing that weeks ago. She had witnessed American nurses treating their infected wounds with authentic medicine, seen guards sharing cigarettes across the fence, and heard their laughter not directed at the prisoners in mockery, but a relaxed, shared mirth, a genuine camaraderie not born from delight in others' suffering. That night, Gretta lay on her cot, clutching a photograph concealed within the lining of her uniform. Anneliese, a gap-toothed smile radiating innocence, from a time before the apocalypse, before the bombs fell, before hunger had transformed children into prematurely aged figures. A sudden interruption broke the barracks quiet. "Hoffmann?" Sergeant Morrison stood at the entrance, his face impassive. "The commander wishes to see you now." Silence descended upon the room. "It's nothing," Gretta lied, rising unsteadily. Her legs trembled as she followed Morrison across the camp, past the guard tower, and through the doors of the administrative building. A singular, terrifying thought consumed her. Asterisk. They've discovered the letters. They know what I did before my capture. Asterisk. Morrison paused before a door marked Commander's office and knocked. Send her in, a voice commanded. The door opened. Inside, Commander Patterson sat behind his desk, but he was not alone. A woman in a Red Cross uniform stood beside him, clutching a folder, and she was weeping. Gretta held her breath. Red Cross personnel typically maintained professional detachment during prisoner interrogations, processing paperwork efficiently and moving on, not openly weeping. Please, have a seat, Mrs. Hoffmann, Commander Patterson said, his voice surprisingly genteel. Another perplexing American contradiction. Gretta remained standing. I prefer to stand, sir. This is not an interrogation. The Red Cross woman stepped forward, wiping her eyes. My name is Dorothy Chun. I've just returned from Germany, from Hamburg. In fact, the room seemed to subtly disorient her. Gretta gripped the back of a nearby chair, bracing herself against the impending news. Your daughter, Dorothy continued, her hands trembling as she opened the folder. Anna, she's alive. The words resonated with an impossible truth. A live present tense. Live in reality, not merely a cherished memory. How? Gretta's voice was a raw whisper. How do you know? Dorothy produced a photograph recently. It depicted a girl with Gretta's eyes, noticeably thinner, standing before an unfamiliar building and holding a numbered placard, a Red Cross identification code. We've been documenting the welfare of children in the occupied zones, Dorothy explained. Your daughter is in a temporary children's home in Hamburg. The building survived the firebombing. Gretta's legs gave way. She leaned on the chair, finally sinking into it. But she's starving, Dorothy said softly. They all are. Rations, ... Double quotes, she trailed off, glancing at Commander Patterson. Hey, nodded. Senora Hoffmann, I need to ask you something, and I need your complete honesty. Dorothy leaned forward. Before your capture, did you work in communications? Specifically, did you have access to U-boat coordination ciphers? As Katharina had forewarned, the trap was now unequivocally laid bare. Gretta lifted her chin.
Yes. I was a radio operator in Bremerhaven.
I transmitted coordinates for supply U-boats. Did you retain any records? Any notes? Anything that might help us locate? Quotes. I burned everything before the Americans arrived, Gretta interjected, her voice firm. I am no traitor, even for your daughter. Commander Patterson asked, his question lingering in the air like an insidious pall. Gretta looked at Annalis's photograph, 7 years old, alive, yet starving in a city where children scavenged for potato peels. What do you want me to do? She finally conceded, her resistance wavering. Dorothy and Patterson exchanged a look. We are not asking you to betray Germany, Patterson stated. The war is nearing its conclusion. This is widely acknowledged, but there are still U-boats at sea, still supply lines. If we can locate them more quickly, we can redirect those resources. Medicine to places like Hamburg. You're lying, Gretta whispered. I wish I were, Dorothy countered, her voice heavy with sincerity. But I've seen those children, Mrs. Hoffmann. I've held them as they wept from hunger. Your daughter is among them. Gretta's hands trembled. If I help you, what happens to me? A military tribunal? Execution upon repatriation? If you help us, Patterson said, Iston even, you will not return to Germany as a prisoner. The implications washed over Gretta like a cold tide. Not returning as a prisoner implied something entirely different, something that deeply unsettled her. You want me to defect? The word tasted bitter, like ash. We want you to choose your daughter's future, Dorothy gently urged. After the war, we can arrange for Annalise to come here, to America. You could ... Gretta sprang to her feet, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. Do you think you can buy me with promises? My daughter is German. I am German. We do not abandon our nations simply because of hardship. Commander Patterson's expression remained unchanged. Your nation abandoned you the moment it placed you on a U. Mrs. Hoffmann. It abandoned Annalise when it prioritized weaponry over food rations. You know nothing about ... double. Quotes, I know your daughter weighs only 38 pounds, Dorothy interrupted, her voice trembling when she should weigh 55 pounds. I know she has rickets from malnutrition. I know she cries for her mother every night. Gretta's vision blurred. She pressed her palms against the table, steadying herself. How long do I have to decide? 72 hours, Patterson stated. After that, I will transfer you to another facility. This opportunity will not be extended again. Back in the barracks, Ilse waited by Gretta's cot.
What did they want?
Gretta found herself unable to speak. Instead, she handed Ilse the photograph. Ilse's face crumpled instantly. Greta, she's so thin. They want information about U-boat ciphers. Everything I know, Gretta said, sinking heavily onto her cot. In exchange, they'll bring her here after the war. And if you refuse? Ilse asked. Then I'll eventually go home to Rubbo, to our daughter who might not survive another winter. Ilse sat beside her. What will you do? Before Gretta could answer, Katharina appeared at the doorway, her face alight with an unusual excitement. You must all come to the recreation hall now. Everyone. Katharina, I can't. It's about Germany. About the children. Katharina's voice vibrated with urgency. The Americans are going to show us something. Something we must witness. Gretta and Ilse exchanged a look. They followed Katharina across the camp, joining a throng of prisoners surging towards the building used for movie nights and church services. Inside, nearly 200 women crowded together. A projector hummed from the back. On the white wall ahead, blurred images flickered to life. Gretta held her breath. The footage displayed German cities Hamburg, Berlin, Cologne, but not merely as ruin. They'd all been exposed to propaganda regarding Allied bombing. This footage, however, was markedly different. American soldiers, dozens of them, were distributing food to German children. The footage was raw, unedited, a stark contrast to the sanitized propaganda films they had endured throughout the war. A handheld camera captured G as kneeling on rubble-strewn streets, handing chocolate bars and canned milk to gaunt children with hollow eyes. This was filmed 3 weeks ago. Commander Patterson's voice resonated from the back of the room, in Hamburg, Frankfurt, and Munich. Operation Feed the Future, authorized last month by President Truman. On screen, a small girl, perhaps 6, clutched a can of condensed milk as if it were pure gold. An American soldier, barely in his 20s himself, showed her how to open it. When she tasted it, she began to cry. Gretta's hands flew to her mouth. That's Schillerstrasse, someone whispered. I live 2 blocks from there. The camera continued to pan across a makeshift distribution center. Hundreds of children queued, desperate yet orderly. American soldiers moved among them, checking for ailments, distributing rations, and recording names. Why are you showing us this? Katharina demanded, standing abruptly. Is it to mock us? To show us how you have conquered? It is to show you the truth, Patterson interjected. Your government portrayed us as monsters, claiming we sought Germany's utter destruction. But observe the faces of those soldiers. The lens zoomed in on a sergeant assisting an elderly German woman with supplies. His expression was not triumphant. It was one of weariness, sorrow, and profound humanity. We are not your enemy, Patterson continued. We never were. We were fighting a regime, not a people. The real changed. Now, the screen displayed a children's home, the very building from Annelise's photograph. Gretta surged forward, scanning every face. This is the facility in Hamburg, where many of your children are, Dorothy Chun said, appearing beside Patterson. We have been working with the local German staff... Gretta's voice was a guttural cry. Stop. Stop. Stop the film. The projector halted. On the wall, clear and undeniable, Annalise stood in a line with other children. An American medic examined her, making notes on a clipboard. Her daughter's cheeks were hollow, yet she stood. She moved. She was undeniably alive. Gretta's legs buckled. She sank to her knees, a choked sob tearing from her throat. Around her, other women began to recognize their own children. Cries of relief and anguish filled the hall. Ilsa knelt beside Greta, embracing her trembling form. "My son," someone wailed. "That's my Friedrich, Annelies. Is my Annelies?" There, the room erupted into pandemonium. Women wept, called out names, surged forward, desperate for a clearer view of the screen. Guards advanced to restore order, but halted when Patterson raised a hand. "Let them watch." Essayed softly. The film resumed. More distribution centers, more American soldiers sharing rations, erecting medical tents, organizing supply lines. In every frame, the same improbable truth unfolded. Their enemy was sustaining their children. Katharina stood rigid, her face ash. "This cannot be real. It's propaganda. It must be. It is real," Dorothy stated unequivocally. "I was there. Some of that footage I filmed myself." Greta found she could not breathe. All her convictions regarding the war, the Americans, and Germany's future crumbled like the very buildings depicted on screen. "Why?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Why are you doing this?" Patterson crouched beside her. "Because they are children, Mrs. Hoffmann. And children bear no responsibility for wars." That night, a profound silence enveloped the barracks, yet no one slept. The women lay on their cots, staring at the ceiling, trying to process the enormity of what they had witnessed. Some clutched photographs, others meticulously penned letters they knew might never reach their destination. Greta sat on the floor between the bunks, Annelies's picture resting on her lap. Elsa sat beside her, their shoulders touching. "I thought I would never see her again," Greta whispered. "I had accepted it. As long as she lived, I was content to die here. But now I know she lives because of them. Because American soldiers are feeding German children with their own rations." Greta's voice was hoarse with emotion. "How can I reconcile this reality with everything we were taught?" From the shadows, Katharina emerged and sat opposite them. Her usual defiant spirit had evaporated. "My brother was in the Wehrmacht," she said softly. "He died in Stalingrad. I joined the Luftwaffe to avenge him. For 3 years, I believed the Americans were devils, destroying everything we loved." She offered a bitter, self-deprecating smile. "Now I find they are saving our children, while we rot in concentration camps built for others." The profound irony hung heavy, palpable to every woman present. "What will you do?" Ilsa asked Greta, referring to Patterson's offer. Before Greta could answer, the barracks door opened. Sergeant Morrison stood silhouetted in the doorway. "Mrs. Hoffmann, you have a visitor." Greta and Ilsa exchanged bewildered glances at the late hour. Then followed Morrison across the darkened camp. He did not lead her to the administrative building, but instead to a small office near the medical wing. Dorothy Chun was already there, looking exhausted. A radio transmitter sat on the table. "I pulled some strings," Dorothy explained. "You have 5 minutes. Possibly less, if the connection breaks." Greta stared at the radio, uncomprehending. "The Hamburg Children's Home. They have a radio for emergencies. I convinced them this qualified as one." Dorothy adjusted the frequency. The room filled with static, then cleared. "Go ahead!" A woman's voice, speaking German, crackled through. "This is Nurse Bachmann." "Who is calling?" Greta, hands trembling, reached for the microphone. "This is Gretta Hoffmann, my daughter, Annelies Hoffmann. She is with you. Please, let me speak to her." Silence. Then, "One moment, please." The longest minute of Greta's life extended interminably. Static crackled. Morrison and Dorothy stood at the doorway, affording her privacy. And then, Mama. Greta sank into the chair, the microphone pressed tight against her lips. "Annelies. Oh my God. Annelies. Is that really you? Mama, where are you? Are you coming home?" 7 years old. Her voice was higher, thinner than Gretta remembered, yet undeniably hers. I'm in America, my darling. I'm safe. And you, are they being good to you? The American soldiers bring us food every day. Real food, Mama. Today I had chocolate. I saved half for you. Tears streamed down Gretta's face. You eat all of it, sweetheart. Every single bite. Promise me. But you'll be hungry when you come home. I'm not hungry here. I'm eating well. Promise. The soldiers are very kind. Mama, one of them, Sergeant Williams. He showed me a picture of his daughter. She looks just like me, he said. After the war, perhaps we can exchange letters. Gretta looked up at Dorothy, who offered an encouraging nod. Would you like that, Americas? To have an American friend? Yes, and Mama, Nurse Bachman said. Maybe one day I can visit America. Can I? Can I come visit you? The question hung suspended in the air. Gretta's throat constricted. Through the persistent static, she could hear her daughter's hopeful, innocent breaths, utterly unaware of the impossible choice her mother now confronted. Perhaps one day, my darling Gretta managed to say, after the war ends, we will see what happens. It will end soon, won't it? Nurse Bachman says maybe by summer. Yes, very soon. Gretta wiped her eyes. Annalise, you need to be brave for a little while longer. Can you do that for me? I'm trying, Mama. Some days are hard, but Sergeant Williams says brave girls become strong women. Am I brave? You are the bravest person I know. The static crackled louder. Nurse Bachman's voice cut in. Mrs. Hoffmann, we need to conclude the call. I'm very sorry. Wait, Annalise. I love you more than anything in the world. Never forget that. I love you too, Mama. Please come home soon. The connection severed. Gretta sat rigid, the microphone still clutched to her chest. Dorothy knelt beside her. She sounded so strong. She sounded like she's slowly dying. Gretta's voice was hollow. That forced cheerfulness is what children employ to protect their parents from the harsh truth. The rations are working. Another month. ... Another month. Gretta shot to her feet. You saw the footage. Those children will need years of proper nutrition to recover. If they live that long. She turned to face Dorothy and Morrison, something resolute hardening within her. I will give you everything you want. U-boat ciphers, supply routes. I remember everything, but I have conditions. Morrison straightened. Mrs. Hoffmann, you are in no position to... Let her speak, Dorothy interjected, recognizing the turning point. Gretta's hands were clenched tight. I demand that Annalise be brought here within 3 months of the war's end, not a year. Not merely when arrangements can be made. 3 months. Until then, I demand regular radio contact, at least once a week. That's reasonable, Dorothy said, glancing at Morrison. I'm not finished. Gretta's voice grew firmer. The other women here, whose children you are feeding, they deserve to know their children are safe. Regular updates, photographs, letters. You cannot leverage our children as a bargaining chip and then deny us access to information. Morrison's jaw tightened, but Dorothy slowly nodded. One more thing. Gretta took a step closer. I want to know why. The genuine rationale, not merely propaganda. Extolling American benevolence. Why are you feeding German children while German soldiers are still killing Americans? A heavy silence filled the room. Commander Patterson's voice cut through it from the doorway. Because we have seen what happens if we don't. He walked in, carrying a worn folder. After the First World War, the Allied blockade persisted for months following the armistice. Hundreds of thousands of German children tragically starved to death. Do you know what became of the survivors? Gretta remained silent. They matured, filled with profound anger, humiliation, and despair, and barely. 20 years later, they marched into Poland. Patterson tossed the folder onto the table. We will not make that mistake again. We feed your children because we do not wish to fight your grandchildren. This stark honesty struck Greta with greater force than any propaganda could have achieved. So, it's strategy, she said bitterly, not compassion. It's both, Dorothy said softly. Those soldiers in the footage, they weren't thinking about geopolitics. They were thinking about the sisters and daughters they left at home. But yes, there is strategy. Is that wrong? Greta looked again at Annelies's photograph. I don't know anymore. I don't know what is right or wrong. I only know my daughter is alive because of you. Then help us keep her alive, Patterson urged. Help us end this war faster. The following morning, Greta sat in a secure room with Petters, Dorothy, and 2 military intelligence officers. Maps covered the table coastlines, supply coordinates, U-boat patrol patterns. Let's start with Bremerhaven, one officer said, pushing a map towards her. You worked there from 1942 to 1944, correct? Greta picked up the pencil, her hand trembling. Every mark she made felt like a profound betrayal, yet simultaneously promised a quicker path for humanitarian supplies to Hamburg, to Annelies. The primary coordination station is here. She indicated a spot on the map, but we had backup transmitters in 3 locations. U-boats would surface here. She marked another point, to receive supply coordinates. She spoke for 3 hours, detailing cipher sequences, key officer names, and critical supply schedules. The intelligence officers scribbled furiously, occasionally asking for clarification. This is truly incredible, one finally stated. Mrs. Hoffmann, this information could enable us to intercept crucial supply lines within weeks, which means those resources can be diverted to civilian areas faster, Dorothy added, watching Greta's face. But Greta felt numb. She had just given the enemy everything they needed to strangle Germany's remaining naval operations. A chilling question formed in her mind. If anyone back home finds out what she did, ... what will happen to me after the war? She suddenly asked, if I return to Germany, even with Annelies, and my actions are discovered ... You will not return to Germany, Patterson stated firmly. It's part of the agreement. You will be granted political asylum here in the United States. A new identity, if necessary. Your daughter too. So, I become an American. The words felt alien. I erase who I am. You become whoever you choose to be, Dorothy countered gently. Isn't that what America is about? That afternoon, Greta returned to the barracks to find the other women gathered around Ilsa, who was reading a newly posted notice. What is it? Greta asked. Ilsa's eyes were glistening. They're organizing a letter-writing program. We can send letters to the children's homes, and they will reply. A surge of excited chatter erupted among the women. Katharina stood apart, arms crossed. But even she seemed visibly shaken. It's manipulation, Katharina asserted, catching Greta's gaze. They reveal our children to us. They allow us to speak with them. And suddenly, we're meant to feel grateful to our captors. Are you not grateful? Greta asked softly. Your nephew is in Munich. I saw him being fed American rations in the footage. Katharina's face contorted. Of course I'm grateful. That's what makes it so unbearable. How can I hate them when they are saving my family? Perhaps you don't have to, Ilsa suggested. Perhaps that is the point. The point is to break us, Katharina snapped. To make us forget what they did to our country. What we did to ourselves, Greta retorted, surprising even her own ears. What our leaders did. The Americans did not initiate this war. We did. Silence descended upon the barracks. Several women stared at Greta in shock. How dare you? Katharina began. I dare, because I just spent 3 hours giving them military intelligence, Greta interrupted. Her voice rising. I dare, because my daughter is alive, because of American food. I dare, because I am weary of pretending we are mere victims. Well, we actively helped construct the machine that devastated Europe. Tears streamed down her face. I was a good German. I followed orders. I believed in our cause, and now my daughter weighs 38 pounds and thinks chocolate is a miracle. So yes, Katharina, Perhaps we need to be broken. Perhaps we need to see what we have become. The silence lingered. Then Elsa stood and embraced Greta. We are all broken, Elsa whispered. The question is what we can rebuild from the pieces. News of Greta's cooperation spread throughout the camp within days, eliciting a spectrum of reactions. Some women avoided her. Their disapproval was palpable. Others quietly approached her, asking about the intelligence officers, about what they wanted to know. They asked me about factory locations. One woman admitted at dinner. I worked in an aircraft manufacturing plant. I told them I couldn't remember. But you remember, Greta started. The woman stared at her plate, the palpable weight of her conscience evident. If I tell them, am I a traitor, or am I helping to end a war that is killing our children? This was the profound ethical dilemma that now confronted them all. 2 weeks later, Dorothy returned with new footage. This time, the women gathered eagerly in the recreation hall, desperate to see their children. The images showed progress. The children appeared marginally healthier. A flicker of color had returned to some cheeks. A few even managed to smile. The supply routes identified with Mrs. Hoffmann's help have been successfully rerouted, Patterson announced. Food deliveries to Hamburg have increased by 40%, to Munich by 35%. A wave of murmuring swept through the assembled women. Greta felt dozens of eyes upon her, conveying a mixture of awe and resentment. After the screening, Katharina approached her outside the barracks. I need to speak with you. They walked to the fence, away from prying ears. I have intelligence, Katharina whispered, about Luftwaffe supply depots, secret locations that might still be operational. Greta waited, sensing the magnitude of Katharina's internal battle. If I give this to them, will they truly divert these supplies to the children? They have done so with all the intelligence I've provided, Greta replied. I cannot guarantee every last bit will go to civilians, but a significant portion will. Far more than if we remain silent. Katharina gazed at the dimming sky. I joined the Luftwaffe to honor my brother, to fight for Germany. Now I will betray everything he died for, or you will save the children he intended to protect, Greta countered, her voice firm. Your brother didn't die for German children to starve. He died believing he was protecting them, and now the enemy is protecting them. Katharina let out a bitter laugh. The irony would indeed be amusing, were it not so devastating. Over the following weeks, the dam broke. More women came forward, their conscience compelling them to act. Radio operators, factory workers, nurses who had served in military hospitals. Each contributed fragments of critical information, enabling the Allies to pinpoint supplies, reallocate resources, and accelerate the war's conclusion. The guards noticed the shift. The camp's atmosphere transformed from sullen defiance into something far more intricate, a mixture of sorrow, relief, and cautious hope. You've started something, Ilsa told Greta one evening. The women call it choosing the children. When someone decides to cooperate, they say she chose the children over the Reich. And those who don't cooperate? Ilsa hesitated. They say nothing. Everyone understands. It is certainly not an easy choice, but it is becoming increasingly prevalent. In early May, Patterson assembled all the prisoners in the recreation hall. His face was grave. I bring news from Europe, he began. As of yesterday, Germany has surrendered unconditionally. The war in Europe is over. The room erupted not in celebration, but in a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. Relief, profound sorrow, and palpable fear. Women embraced each other, weeping. Some collapsed, others stood rigid, unable to process the news. Greta felt Ilsa's hand tightened on hers. It's over, Ilsa whispered. We can finally go home. But Greta's thoughts raced ahead. Home to what? A shattered nation. A daughter who barely knew her. A new life in America. Mrs. Hoffmann. Patterson's voice cut through the din. I need to speak with you privately. In Patterson's office, Dorothy was already waiting. A thick folder bearing Greta's name lay on the desk. The war's over, Patterson stated. This means our agreement moves to the next phase. Your daughter can be brought here within 8 weeks. We have already begun processing the paperwork. 8 weeks. Less than 2 months until she could embrace Annelies once more. What about the others? Gretta asked, her thoughts immediately turning to her fellow prisoners. The women whose children are still in Germany. Those who cooperated with intelligence will be prioritized for family reunification, Dorothy explained. Those who did not cooperate. Dorothy's voice trailed off, leaving the stark implication hanging in the air. Will be sent back to Germany. Gretta finished. To a nation in ruins. Back to their homes, Patterson corrected, or what remains of them. We are not punishing anyone, Mrs. Hoffmann. But resources are finite. We must prioritize. Gretta thought of Katharina, who had finally shared her intelligence 3 weeks prior, and of the dozen other women who had come forward, and of those who hadn't. I want to speak to them, she said. All of them? Before you begin processing their releases. Patterson frowned. Why? Because they deserve to understand their choices. Truly understand them. Not from you, but from someone who has made the choice herself. That night, Gretta stood before the assembled prisoners, 247 women, who over the past year had forged a family through shared barracks, shared meals, shared fears, and now a shared impossible decision. The war is over, Gretta began, her voice steady. We are going home, but we need to talk about what home means now. She described what she had learned from the intelligence reports. Germany was devastated. Cities were pulverized. Infrastructure collapsed. Millions displaced, and food shortages would persist for years. If you return now, you return to that a nation that will take decades to rebuild. Your children, if they have survived, will grow up in poverty and chaos. A ripple of murmuring passed through the crowd. But there is another choice, for those willing to accept it. Gretta's hands clenched. The Americans are offering asylum, a new life here. Your children can come here to grow up with food, education, and security. But it means abandoning Germany forever. To become a traitor. Someone shouted from the back. To become a survivor? Gretta countered forcefully. To become a mother who forsakes national pride for her child's future. Katharina stood up. What about those who have already given intelligence? What happens if we return? If what we did is discovered? The question hung heavy in the air, weighted with fear. I don't know, Gretta admitted candidly. Perhaps nothing. Perhaps everything. But I do know what happens if we stay here. We can watch our children thrive. We can build new lives from the ashes of the old. It's not that simple, an older woman interjected, her voice laced with pain. Germany is our home, our language, our culture, our identity. You are asking us to abandon our very identities. I'm asking you to evolve, Gretta countered, to become something new, to prevent the recurrence of the mistakes that led us to this juncture. The debate raged for hours. Women argued, wept, shouted. Some insisted on returning, clinging to the familiar, however broken. Others wrestled internally, their loyalties torn. A minority had already made their decision to stay. Finally, Ilse stood. I am staying. My son is 8. In Germany, he will grow up in Rubel, learning to hate the next enemy we are told to hate. Here he can grow free of all that. I am staying. One by one, women rose. Some declared their intention to stay. Others announced their departure. Each decision was met with a blend of respect, understanding, and palpable sorrow. By midnight, the numbers were clear. 112 women would seek asylum in the United States. 135 would return to Germany. The camp had split into 2 factions, not with animosity, but with a mournful understanding that each was doing what she believed was right. 8 weeks later, Gretta stood at the gates of Camp Rustin, watching a military transport truck approach. Her hands trembled, her heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and fear. Beside her, Ilse squeezed her shoulder. She's here, Ilse whispered. The vehicle came to a halt. Dorothy Chun was the first to disembark, then helped a small figure descend thin, pale, but standing on her own. Annelies Gretta's legs moved faster than her conscious thought. She ran, knelt before her daughter, and swept her into an embrace that felt like drawing breath again after a prolonged submersion. Mama! Anneliese sobbed into her shoulder. You're real. You're really here. I'm here, my darling. I'm here, and I will never leave you again. They clung to each other as the world continued around them. Other vehicles arrived, their doors opening to reveal more children eager to be reunited with their mothers. The air filled with German voices, with weeping, with laughter, with the palpable sounds of families rebuilding. Sergeant Morrison watched from a distance, his eyes wet. You did good work here, Dorothy murmured to him. We just fed some children, he replied, attempting to downplay the profound impact. It was everything, Dorothy responded, her gaze sweeping over the reuniting families. It's how we break the cycle. Later, in the barracks that served as their temporary dwelling until permanent housing could be arranged, Gretta settled Anneliese onto the cot beside her. Her daughter's eyes were already closed, exhausted by the journey and the torrent of emotion. Mama, Anneliese mumbled, drifting. Are we Americans now? Gretta stroked her hair. We are who we are, my love, and that is enough. Will I learn English? Yes, you will go to school. You will make friends, and you will grow up safe. Anneliese's voice, barely a whisper, posed another question. Will you tell me about Germany? About where we came from? Gretta's throat constricted. Yes, I will tell you everything. The good and the bad, so you will understand where we have been, and choose where you will go. Anneliese's breathing deepened, and she drifted into sleep. Gretta sat watching her, this miracle child who had endured bombs, starvation, and profound separation. Across the barracks, Ilsa soothed her son to sleep, whispering stories in German. Katharina was writing a letter to her nephew, who was due to arrive the following month. A dozen other mothers were tucking in their children, meticulously constructing new lives from the fragments of their old ones. Outside, the American flag fluttered gently in the evening breeze, a symbol of their new reality. Beyond the fence, the Louisiana countryside stretched green and tranquil. Somewhere in the distance, children played baseball, their carefree laughter carrying on the wind, echoing the images from Gretta's past. Gretta thought of the women who had chosen to return to Germany. She hoped they would find what they sought, that their homeland would heal. She hoped Germany would rebuild better, honoring its children instead of sacrificing them. But for her, for Anneliese, this place was now home. Not because America was flawless, but because it offered what Germany, in its current state, could not. A future unburdened by the weight of the past. She took out the wartime photograph she had carried with her Anneliese at 6, with her gap-toothed smile. A poignant relic of a life almost lost. Tomorrow, she would take a new one. Her daughter at 7, thin but recovering, standing before the American flag, her mother's arm around her. 2 photographs. 2 distinct lives. One pivotal choice that had irrevocably altered everything. Gretta lay beside her sleeping daughter and closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she dreamt of tomorrow, not yesterday. And in that dream, Anneliese was laughing.